Hello, I'm Stephen Ratcliffe, and in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my top 4 essential tips that I've come across as a therapist that can have the biggest impact on your mental well-being. So recently I got asked by somebody who said to me, Steve, you're working with lots of different disorders and different problems. What would you say are your biggest kind of tips for somebody if they were struggling with their mental health? Are there some tips that maybe can be used for whatever type of problem that people are maybe going through, or that may have the biggest impact on people's life? It kind of got me thinking. I was thinking, right, okay, what would my kind of like top tips be that I feel I've come across, or I had the biggest impact on the people I've been working with? So that's what maybe gave you the idea for this video, and thought maybe if I could share some of these reflections, some of these tips that I think would be most helpful, that maybe you could get some benefit from that. So I'm only going to briefly touch upon these different tips because obviously you can have several sessions to be able to help you with any one of these areas that I'm going to talk about. But these are just to give you some food for thought, something that maybe you might want to think about, reflect on, read up more on. Maybe if you feel like you'd like to seek therapy for sessions around some of these areas, then you can do that. So for number 1, I put tolerating and embracing uncertainty. Now, to give some context to this, lots of different kind of anxiety problems, different disorders, a lot of them relate to this difficulty with being able to deal with or tolerate the idea of uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen next. Whether it's uncertainty about whether I have some sort of health problem, whether it's the uncertainty of whether I'm going to have a panic attack or feel anxious in a certain situation, the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen can be a real trigger for a lot of people I work with. And so finding ways to be able to build your tolerance and feel more comfortable with that, to be able to deal with the anxiety feelings that we have that come with uncertainty, and accepting that life is uncertain and we don't know what's going to happen around the corner, and that's okay, and we can feel able to cope with that and to be able to deal with that and whatever challenges that may come. I think this is a really important aspect that can transcend lots of different kind of problems. So working on being able to tolerate uncertainty, but also embracing it, to be able to be more open to, the excitement of not knowing what's going to happen next. That can feel very daunting for a lot of people, maybe hearing that, but we can, with practice and with engaging in therapy approaches, we can learn to not only accept and tolerate, but also appreciate the spice of life that comes with uncertainty, and having a lot more confidence in our ability to cope with whatever challenges maybe lay ahead. So that's one area I think is definitely useful to be able to focus on. And to do that, it's really important to be able to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. So often we kind of keep within our safety bubble, I kind of call it, within what feels safe to me. And what we can find is that as we do that, our confidence and, again, tolerance of the uncertainty outside of that can diminish and can feel smaller. So doing things that are out of our comfort zone in little steps can be a really positive thing to do to help with your anxiety. So that's one definite tip. For number 2, being more flexible with the way you think about things. So having more flexible thinking is a key aspect of cognitive behavior therapy. Our mind is designed in a way that sometimes it can misread situations, and it can fall prey to different, what we call unhelpful thinking styles or thinking habits. This is not your fault. This is just part of the way our mind is designed. And I think half the battle is spotting when our mind is doing that. So rather than just believing the thoughts that we get, the thoughts and the feelings that we feel, just believing them and going with it, it's really important that we learn to be a little bit more flexible with our thinking, to be able to take a step back, to recognize whether our mind is taking a bit of a skewed view here or maybe a biased view. I think that's a really important message there, because while ever we kind of believe our thoughts and our feelings and go with it, we can sort of run into trouble, and it can create lots more kind of anxiety or worry or negative thinking. That's not very helpful, and often it's not very reasonable or truthful or rational. So I think trying to engage in a process that can take a step back from our thoughts, look at things from a different perspective, from a more objective perspective, is a really helpful thing. Now for number 3, I've mentioned this in a previous video about engaging in meaningful activity. It's really important that we're engaging in activities that are aligned with our values and what's important to us, things that give us a sense of pleasure, sense of achievement, sense of motivation, sense of closeness to other people, and sort of joy. I guess really what I'm saying here as well is engaging in experiencing positive emotional states. So things like things feeling awesome, some sort of positive shock in a way of something beautiful views maybe, or maybe again feeling kind of joy, feeling compassion, feeling love. These are all positive emotional states, and the more we feel these, the more we can become more resilient to challenges. We can be more creative with the way we think about things. We might be more able to take a step back from our thoughts. We can see through scenarios and situations a little bit easier. We can bounce back from challenges when we're experiencing more positive emotional states. It's really helpful for our general mental well-being, for our mood, and it's also really helpful for anxiety as well. So engaging in meaningful activity that's aligned with your values and experiencing these positive emotional states is really important. So just think about over the last week or two, whether you've been experiencing any of these, has there been a distinct lack of this, in your life, and maybe setting some goals for how maybe you could try and experiment with it to see like what happens if I spend a week or two engaging more in some of the things that I enjoy. What happens then, and see how that impacts on you. And for number 4, I feel that cultivating compassion is really, really helpful. Now, when I say compassion, I mean compassion for ourselves, so being kind to ourselves, but also cultivating compassion towards other people, and also being able to receive compassion from other people that sometimes can be difficult. When we cultivate compassion, we can grow in our sense of strength and courage to deal with challenges that are in our life. It can give us that empowerment and that motivation to be able to maybe face our fears or step outside our comfort zone, to be able to assert ourselves and be a more confident version of ourselves. We might be able to think through challenges and scenarios. We can have more wisdom to problem solve situations. We can also be able to cultivate kindness towards other people, and also be more kind to ourselves when we get very self-critical thoughts, and maybe when we're doubting ourselves or situations. It links really nicely into some of the being more flexible with our thinking, because when we come from a compassionate angle, we can look at things from a wider, more broad perspective when we cultivate compassion. That's definitely something I've come across that's been really helpful for people, and can help for your general well-being and resilience. So I hope you found that helpful. They're my 4 tips that I've come across that I feel would be the most help for people with whatever kind of problems maybe they're facing, whatever challenges they're facing. These are the things that I think has had the biggest impact. And if we can engage in some of these 4 tips, I think that we'll generally feel a lot of improvement with our mental well-being. I've only briefly talked through these, so these of course are things that you can, as I mentioned before, read more around and maybe seek further advice with. But I hope that's given you some food for thought anyway. Have a lovely day. Take care. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, if you're liking the videos that I'm putting out, please feel free, and then you get the notification when new videos come out. I post lots of videos about lots of common mental health challenges that are useful for people experiencing them, but also maybe other therapists as well who can share them with their clients and make use of them too. Take care. Have a lovely day.